This one, though, comes from Fiona Campbell. Fiona, good evening.
Thank you. I'm concerned that Glasgow and probably other cities across Scotland is becoming increasingly neglected looking. Issues such as littering, fly tipping and graffiti, as well as potholed, uneven and persistently flooded pavements and roads. How can civic pride be restored?
A lot of concern at the moment about the state of Scotland's biggest city. I think a third of the shops in Sauchiehall Street as well, empty at the moment. Donald MacLeod, you've written about this, you've talked about this. How can civic pride be restored here?
How do we restore it? 30 years ago, when I started my business in Sauchiehall Street, I'd already started further down in Union Street, there was a lot of civic pride. There was buses, there was movement, people went out, people enjoyed stuff. Yeah, it wasn't perfect. There was graffiti, there was dirt, there was litter, but not like it is today.
So what's changed?
Lack of investment, a lack of care. I think I don't think the council's done a great job in recent years of looking after the place. I don't think the Scottish Government have equally given them the funds to do that. I think it's been a mess, actually. We have been, from my business, we have been neglected, we've been ignored. The hospitality sector has been treated appallingly all the way through. So from the back end of the pandemic to today, it's one worry after another. Costs have went up. We all know that cost of living went up. We all know that energy prices are through the roof. But there's been no real support. And for a sector, my sector, the third biggest employer in Scotland, there's been no real support at all from the Scottish Government. Scant regard has been given to it. It's been treated contemptuously. The money's been that was meant earmarked for us has been withheld or passed on somewhere else. And we're not even given the rates allowance, the rates relief that was allowed in England. We are neglecting hospitality, therefore we're neglecting jobs, we're neglecting our streets, we're neglecting, we put in LEZ. My God, we bring that in, and then we increase parking charges. It's as if we're trying to stop people coming into Glasgow. And I mean, you would think they'd lost their marbles. Well, they'll deny that, but I'm sure there's a big, huge hole in the bag, man, because they really have lost the plot, because they're now increasing the parking from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock. So that is going to impact on workers within the trade who, they can barely afford to come in. They're not the most highly paid, except in my place, of course. But, when they come in, they've not got a lot of money, they've got cars and they pay parking, and now they've got to run out every 2 hours to do it. And who's going to come in for a meal at a restaurant and park up and then 2 hours run out again, another 20 quid? It's a joke. Donald, it's terrible.
Let's hear from the audience on this. Man in the green sweater down in the front here. How do we restore civic pride in Glasgow?
It's a very good question. Can I just say that this morning, actually, I was out in Drumchapel, that's where I stay, with a pensioner and a member of the council, identifying all the potholes, all the gullies that need unblocked, all the fly tipping, all the dog poo, right? A tremendous amount of what we'd call antisocial, kind of a community disparate, right? That puts people's heads down, right? People are fed up with the same old issues all the time and trying to get the council to respond to this. So we had to take the council down there this morning and identify it all, and then hopefully they'll take a bit of action on it and clear up the place. Because if we're trying to restore people's pride in communities, I know you're talking about the city centre, right? That's a different issue from communities like Drumchapel, right? I mean, we've been battered and bruised for years and years, and we're trying to get people to respect our area, right? And I mean, the same will go for Paul and Govan, and I'm sure other places, Maryhill. We're going into a period now where all the cutbacks are really hitting communities that are disadvantaged, right? And we can't take it anymore. And the council need to, and the Scottish Government need to respond to all this instead of going round in circles all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Hear you loud and clear. Lady on the aisle there with the blonde hair. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I work within Glasgow City Council. I'm a union convener. So over the last nearly 2 decades, the demise of the public services in this city for the tax that is paid by the people of this city to the government, they are not getting it back. They are cutting services, they are outsourcing services, they are when there's workers are retiring or anything, there's no workers getting replaced. What they are doing is they are turning this, it's all about money. Money, money, money. It's the same with the care service. There is no care anymore. It's all about profit making and numbers fitting. It's not about these workers out in the street and about the litter and the potholes and the parks or anything. It is about when there's a big thing comes to Glasgow. It's brilliant. COP26, everything. Let's get everything out there. You know, the cycling championships come. Let's get this part of the city sorted up. Get these weeds up and everything. The pride has been taken out of Glasgow over the last 2 decades, and it needs to be sorted. We need the Scottish Government to start giving money back to Glasgow City Council so that we can set it back up again and get our pride back.
Okay. Alvin McKee, that lady says the pride has been taken out of the city of Glasgow.
Well, I think it's a great city. Lived here all my life, and when I go abroad and you talk about Glasgow, very proud of what it's accomplished in the past and what it's accomplishing now. And we all recognise that there are issues out there, and the council works, sending out the councillors to identify this stuff. The councillors that I know spend time doing that every week of the year, going out and identifying where the issues are in their communities, and then making sure that the council services are coming out to address those, because that's an important part of their job. But if you're talking about that coming back to funding, money's gone from the government to the council, right? At the end of the day, the government's got a limited amount of money. We don't have the ability to borrow any more money. It's a decision on where that money goes. Does it go to the health service? Does it go to the councils? Does it go to education? Where does that money go? So the government works as hard as it can to get that money out to the right places. Now, there might be decisions about what the priority is. There might be issues about what the priority are within different councils, and every one of the 32 councils is going to take a different perspective on what they're doing about that. But you're absolutely right, those services need to be provided, and there's nothing worse when you're driving along the road and you hit the big pothole, or you look out and you see the place, it's a mess, it should be tidied up.
Can you remember a time when Glasgow looked worse than it does at the moment? Since you've been in MSP, since you've been in politics?
Well, I think if you look back your whole life, you would look back and say, has it been worse at particular points in time?
Since you've been in politics?
I wouldn't say it's any worse. I mean, if you look back over the last 6 or 7 years, I would say that there's issues just now. Certainly, I would say with potholes are certainly issues, and that's probably worse than it's been.
Pam Vincent-Blanchley.
I have to say I'm astonished, and I'm proud of our city. I'm proud of the people who live and work in our city. I'm proud of the people who do everything they possibly can to keep this city going in very, very difficult circumstances. But the reality is, the cuts that your government have passed down to local councils have absolutely decimated services. Everything that we've just heard about what's happening in the streets, the potholes, the lack of support for our parks, the lack of upgrading in them, the LEZ that's meant that businesses are really struggling
so what
within
would
the
Labour
city
do
centre.
differently?
Well, we put forward a budget, the Labour councillors put forward a budget in Glasgow that had a really forward focus, that would have brought investment into the city, that would have used unspent money, by the way, on the Glasgow Loves Local club fund that the SNP brought in. Unspent money, we would have put that back into communities. We'd have put £6 million into fixing the roads and potholes, because when I was recently out, I did a walk round with a group of people who have had visual impairments. Some of those people, when they're walking around our city, one person spoke about a time where they were walking with their white stick in front of them and it stuck in the pothole. They broke their ribs. This is a situation in our city that is not just looks bad, it actually means that the city is now difficult for people to navigate. Disabled people feel that they're being frozen out of it because they can't get around it easily. and people can see what's happening in their streets because we've not supported cleansing workers for decades, and we're really in a situation where we cannot take another penny of cuts by the SNP government.
It's important. I hear what Pam's saying, but the idea that Labour's got the answer to this is nonsense. Three Labour councillors didn't even turn up to vote for the budget, and one of them was away on a cruise. That's how seriously they took it. And the reality you're talking about, in one hand there's not enough money, in the other hand there's money that's underspent. Make your mind up, which is it?
And Labour did run Glasgow for years, Pam, as well.
Labour did run Glasgow.
Really, really important.
Labour did run Glasgow for years, but it never looked like this when we were running it. And the point that you're making about there's either no money or there's unspent money, the point I was making about that money is, first of all, the SNP government, because they have not grown the economy. The economy across the rest of the UK has grown faster than Scotland, so you've not grown the economy. You've not supported businesses in Glasgow to bring in investment, and the money that wasn't spent on the Glasgow Loves Local card, the one example I gave, wasn't spent because of the incompetence of your administration.
None of this.
Final point.
No, I came back to you, Ivan. None of this is fixing Glasgow. Let's try and find some solutions. Brian Whittle.
I think one of the things that I get this made about here is the fact that, you know, cutting money to the councils is such a false economy. Because we talked about education, in the last question, and education is the responsibility of the council. So if you cut money to the councils, you're cutting money to education, you're cutting money to services, you're cutting money to things like sport and art and music and drama. We can't have that. And the introduction of the LEZ into Glasgow, I was there in Parliament and tried to put some amendments into Parliament around that. I agree that we need to cut emissions in the town, but if you do that, you have to you still have to have the ability to get into the city. You still have to have the ability to get around the city. And they put the LEZ into Glasgow without that consideration. And if you want to put the pride back into Glasgow, you can't have, you know, streets and streets where all you're seeing is to let signs. You have to support the business. The nighttime economy is getting destroyed because you can't get into the city, you can't get out of the city.
Hospitality is getting destroyed.
Workers can't get in and out. Workers who work, you know, late hours can't get home at night. You have to put a structure in place that allows the economy to develop and to grow.